Okay, I'm gonna go live now.
Good evening, everyone. This is the 7th out of 8 in a series of live webinars hosted by the National Center for Improving Literacy that we do each Wednesday of each month. These webinars are based on articles of the National Center Improving Literacy published in the Reading League Journal as part of their Educator Tools series. This webinar will focus on best practice for how to use an infographic to learn about the critical role of phonological awareness. Tonight, we have the pleasure of having Deborah Lynham, who is currently pursuing our doctoral degree in childhood studies at Rutgers University, Camden, while working as a graduate assistant for the NJ Tiered Systems, I think that's New Jersey, Tiered Systems of Supports for Early Reading Initiative at the Graduate School of Applied and Professional Psychology. After more than a decade of working in the nonprofit sector at organizations such as the New Jersey Statewide Parent Advocacy Network, Learning Ally, and AIM Institute for Learning Research, Deborah returned to school to pursue her research interests in literacy, learning disability, and educational policy. She serves on the Family Engagement Advisory Board for the National Center on Improving Literacy and recently received an appointment on the U.S. Department of Education's Regional Advisory Committee for the Mid-Atlantic region. A passionate advocate for children's literacy, Deborah previously chaired the New Jersey State Special Education Advisory Council and served on the New Jersey Department of Education's Dyslexia Handbook Committee. She is a certified Orton Gillingham teacher, a founding member of the parent-led grassroots movement Decoding Dyslexia, New Jersey, and a board member of the International Multisensory Structured Language Educational Council and the Reading League, New Jersey. Deborah resides in Haddon Heights, New Jersey, and is honored to have been accepted to the 2025 Eagleton Graduate Fellowship Program in Politics and Government with the Designated Governor's Executive Award. Thank you so much, Deborah, for joining us tonight. Take it away.
Thanks, Donna. So the National Center on Improving Literacy is a federally funded national comprehensive center established by the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, in the fall of 2016. It's jointly administered by the Office of Special Education Programs and the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education at the U.S. Department of Education. NCIL is a partnership among literacy experts, university researchers, and technical assistance providers, specifically the Center on Teaching and Learning at the University of Oregon, the Florida Center for Reading Research at Florida State University, and RMC Research Corporation. Our mission is to increase access to and use of evidence-based approaches to screen, identify, and teach students with literacy-related disabilities, including dyslexia. My name is Deborah Lynham. You heard that big intro, but I'm very happy to be here with you this evening to talk a little bit about the potential for using some of NCIL's materials, such as the infographics and toolkits that you're going to see this evening, in your local settings for both educator or family engagement purposes. After the session, I hope that you'll be increasing your understanding of phonological awareness, as well as your ability to effectively recognize instructional practices in teaching phonological awareness skills to prepare early readers. I also hope that you'll leave with insights into how infographics and other resources produced by NCIL can be used to promote awareness and knowledge of evidence-based literacy practices in your local settings. Engage in this evening's session with an eye and an ear for how these materials may be useful in your professional learning communities, as coaching supports, or even as tools to discuss with families at things like school literacy nights. So let's get started talking about phonological awareness. So phonological awareness is a broad term, and it refers to the ability to think about and be consciously aware of the sound structures in spoken words. Phonological awareness is like an umbrella, like you see here. And under this umbrella lives a range of skills from phonological sensitivity, which are those larger, more noticeable sound units, to phonemic awareness, which are more discrete individual sounds in words that we call phonemes. So the resource that you're seeing here on this screen is the NCIL infographic that's titled Phonological Awareness. What is it and how does it relate to phonemic awareness? So if you'd like to download this resource for later use, you can find the link in the chat. You're going to see these links going in continually through the night as I introduce some of the new resources that are available. So now let's discuss this range of phonological awareness that falls under the umbrella. So here you see phonological sensitivity. This includes those larger sound parts in words, such as recognition of word level sound units, such as rhyming, so bat, cat, hat, alliteration, the bold big brown bear, and sentence segmentation, such as knowing that the sentence, I see the dog, has 4 words. It also includes recognition of syllables. So the word baby can be segmented into 2 syllables, bay-bee. And conversely, blending the syllables exercise produces the whole word unit exercise. Phonological sensitivity also includes onset rhyme units. An onset is the initial consonant, consonant blend, or consonant digraph in a syllable, and the rhyme is the vowel sound and the remaining phonemes in that syllable. For example, in the word map, the onset is and the rhyme unit is ap. As I mentioned earlier, since these are larger sound units, these may be units that are a little bit more noticeable to your young students. Phonemic awareness is the most advanced phonological awareness skill. It involves the ability to identify and manipulate the individual sounds in spoken words. So remember, these individual sounds are referred to as phonemes. Early readers must master the ability to recognize the phonemes in spoken words, in addition to recognizing letters in printed words. And it's the connections between these sounds or phonemes and the letters or graphemes in words that are so important. So for example, the word moon is comprised of 3 sounds or phonemes, oo, n, that map to the letters or graphemes M, O, O, N. Phoneme level awareness is critical to understanding the alphabetic principle, and it's a necessary component of early reading and spelling skill development. Now, this infographic that we just walked through, in New Jersey, I have used this infographic in an online training module that we recently built in collaboration with our Department of Education, and we use this in our family resource section. So we think that this is a great graphic that could be used in parent engagement work, during parent-teacher conferences, or at family literacy nights, because it's a really fun, colorful explanation of this specific skill set. So up next is another NCIL infographic, and this one is called How We Learn to Read, the Critical Role of Phonological Awareness. The link will be in the chat. So students learn to identify the sounds or phonemes in words and build their phonemic awareness best when instruction explicitly connects phonemes to the graphemes they represent. These graphemes may be single letters or letter combinations, and it's this mapping that's the essence of the alphabetic principle. When this mapping is well developed, it allows readers to accurately read or decode about 70% of single syllable words that they're going to be encountering in the text that they're reading. In addition, when these young readers encounter a word in print for the first time and they understand the alphabetic principle, the odds are very good that they're going to be able to read and pronounce that word correctly. So as shown in this infographic, there are several ways to effectively teach phonological awareness to prepare early readers. These strategies are the strategies that are in recommendation number 2 in the Institute for Education Sciences What Works Clearinghouse Educator Practice Guide on foundational skills to support reading for understanding. So this recommendation number 2 talks about developing students' awareness of the segments of sound in speech and how they link to letters. This infographic can be a great on-ramp to the more detailed content that's contained in that practice guide. So this might be something that you introduce maybe in a professional learning community like lunch and learn session, and then you can follow up and provide the practice guide to give more detailed information. But this infographic talks about the 3 strategies for effectively teaching phonological awareness. And they include teaching students to recognize and manipulate the sounds of speech, teaching students letter-sound relations, and teaching students to manipulate letter sounds in print using word-building activities. Okay, so now let's discuss each of these in a little bit more detail. So as teachers, we want to show and teach our students how to break down speech into smaller units. We can provide students phonological sensitivity activities to support their awareness of those larger sound units, like identifying words and sentences, identifying or counting syllables within words, or having them identify onsets in rhymes. And we can do this throughout the day in little snippet activities that we're just doing during other maybe morning meeting sessions or during read alouds. But what we really want to be jumping into and focusing on explicitly is teaching them at that phonemic awareness level. So we want to teach them to recognize all of the individual sounds in a word, right? Those phonemes. And it's important to note that phonological sensitivity work that we're doing, right? Rhymes, syllables, onset rhymes, that's great to engage students in that language play and that work, but that work is not a prerequisite for teaching and the development of phonemic awareness. So we want to make sure our explicit instruction is getting at that phonemic awareness level. So what does this actually look like in practice? How do we teach students to recognize and manipulate the sounds of speech? So to get us started, students can practice recognizing and isolating the sounds in words by using Elkin sound boxes or by sorting pictures. Students can use Elkin boxes and colored discs to mark the unique sounds that they hear in words. And then additionally, students can even sort picture cards that are based on the beginning, middle, or ending sounds of the word in each picture that you're targeting. So for example, you could ask students to match pictures that begin with the initial sound, and students would look at their selections and might match fan, fox, and fish. Now let's review an activity using those Elkin sound boxes for specifically teaching phonemic awareness. So here is where you're going to have students use those sound boxes to mark the phonemes in selected 2 or 3 phoneme words of your choosing, such as a word like fan. Okay, so you'll provide each student with a set of the Elkin boxes matching the number of phonemes in the selected word. And you're going to place a colored disc over each box and then tell students to repeat the word slowly, pulling down one disc into each box for each unique sound that they hear in that word. Then the students are going to run their finger under the boxes with the chips or the manipulatives in it from left to right as they blend those individual sounds together and say the word fan. If students are using those colored discs, try to select words featuring consonants that are produced by creating a continuous flow of sound, right? So those sounds like sounds that you can hold continuously until you run out of breath. Words that feature those continuous sounds are a bit easier for students to elongate as they identify those unique phonemes in words. And it's recommended to use words with these types of continuous sounds initially as you're working with students. And then as they gain skill in doing this work with the sounds in words, you will see that they'll gain the ability to recognize sounds that even aren't continuous. So that's just a little on-ramp for them, those continuous sounds that they can hold. We're also going to want to be sure that we are teaching students about the letter sound connections. So everything that we just talked about, you'll notice, was just on the sounds level, right? Where there's just some quick activities that are revving up that sound processing system. But we want to make sure that we're then immediately in close contact, quickly connecting those sound activities to the letter sound relationships. So we can begin the first encounter in print, showing them the consonants and the short vowels that match to those sound chips or units that they were using in their Elkin box, or maybe even talking about the first letter that's in those picture cards that they're matching. So it's helpful to teach these letter sounds in the context of words where letters represent their most common sounds. So for example, you'd want to teach the a relationship in a word like bat versus the sound that that A would represent in a word like was, right? Because that sound of the A gets a little bit distorted when it's positioned after a W in a word. So you'll want to be careful about your word choice to make sure that you are giving an example word that represents the sound's most common sound. And then after you do that kind of initial work, we can focus on teaching more complex letter sound relationships, such as consonant blends and digraphs and other predictable but more complex patterns, maybe even vowel digraphs or words with long vowel, silent E patterns. So you'll see you'll want to have a good scope and sequence for introducing those letter sound relationships. So what does this look like in practice? A strong instructional routine to teach students letter sound relationships might look something like this. So after warming students up with a few words that begin with the sound in types of activities that we just talked about, so after warming them up, you may ask questions like, what sound do you hear at the beginning of the word fig? Students would reply, F. You might have your picture cards out. What sounds is beginning of this word? Once you do that kind of warm up, then I would introduce the name of the letter and show the symbol, right? The letter F, and say to the student, this is F. Then I'd give students a picture that represents the sound with a brief keyword or even a backstory that can act as an anchor or a memory aid. So after warming up the sound and then this is F, I could say F spells like the first sound you hear in fan. And then finally, I'd have students practice demonstrating their letter sound understanding by identifying the sound and writing, right? Get some handwriting practice in, handwriting the letter in a practice situation. So as they're practicing their letter formation, they would be saying F, fan. Okay, so this instructional routine could also begin by introducing sounds first. It could work with introducing the letter form first with the name of the letter, depending on curriculum that you're using. I tend to always want to do that little warm up of the phoneme first because I think it's really helpful to go from that sound, phoneme into its grapheme. But programs are different. They tend to these things differently. Good early literacy instruction also provides opportunities for students to review recently taught letter sound relationships over time. So you want to make sure that there's lots of practice of this mapping happening so that students can better remember and then more fluently identify and produce them when they need to in decoding and spelling words. Here's another example of a memorable picture and the letter of the alphabet. So in this example, the teacher would be showing this image and saying, the letter P is for pig, who is very pleasant when asking for pizza. Pig says, please, may I have some pizza? P, pig. So with each picture, the teacher would tell the students a story that incorporates the corresponding sound of the letter so that students remember the character and the sound and the name of the letter when they see that letter in print. It's just another example of how we can reinforce these relationships. So once students have learned several letter sound relations, the Elkin box mapping exercise that we did with just the chips earlier can be repeated. But now, instead of those manipulative chips, we can have students pull down letter tiles or write the letters in the Elkin boxes instead of using just the discs. So you'll be selecting words that contain letter sounds that students have already learned so that they will be successful in mapping the printed letter tiles to the sounds in the words that you're giving them in this activity. Additionally, if students struggle to distinguish certain sounds, you're going to want to draw attention to the specific sounds that they're having trouble with. And you can do this by presenting students with words that differ by those phonemes, right? So for example, maybe you're going to have them compare fan to the word fin and really zone in on that middle vowel sound to understand what that little difference is between those words. So eventually, as you're doing this work and having these activities incorporated into your instruction, you're going to want to have students writing the corresponding letters into the boxes themselves if you've just been using the letter tiles. So this is another practice of their handwriting. It's really kind of incorporating what was in that earlier instructional routine, right? Letter name, letter sound, letter formation. We're getting all of that in with an activity like this mapping activity. So lastly, we also need to be thinking about teaching students to manipulate the letter sounds in printed words by using word building activities. And this is going to encourage them to connect their knowledge of spoken words in spoken language with their knowledge of letter sound relationships in printed words. So students can be taught to apply their knowledge of sounds to form words in print through an activity that uses letters or graphemes on tiles or magnets. And you want something that's easily manipulated, right? So something that they can move around really easy because we're going to have them building words and then changing out some of those letters to produce new words. So after practicing with the teacher, students can work and practice on their own or with a partner by adding and substituting sounds and building harder words, such as those that contain some of the more complex patterns, right? So this type of activity helps students understand how to spell and read words using their awareness of the sounds in language and the letter sound relationships that they have been taught and have learned. So here's a look at a word building activity. First, provide students with those set of letter tiles, or they could be magnetic letters, and have them add or remove letters to create words or to change one word into a different word. You're going to begin by modeling the activity and working through a few examples with students as a group. And then you're going to have students work with a peer and then work independently so that they are getting this practice with adding single missing letters to build CVC words. So for example, in this little example up here, the F and the N are presented to the student, but you're going to have them add in the A sound. They drop that in, and now you're going to ask them to blend that word, and fan, right? So they're blending those sounds together after they're building the word. So as students get comfortable with those types of simple activities, then we can start to engage them in more advanced word building activities that combine sound addition and sound substitution, as you see here in this activity that comes out of the IES practice guide. So for example, you'd be providing students with letter tiles F, A, T, C, and N, and you'll have them make the word fat, and then ask them to make other words by adding, moving, or replacing one letter tile at a time. So let's look at the script here, right? The teacher says, take the F, A, and T tiles and put them together so that the F is first, and the A is in the middle, and the T is last. Does anyone know what that word is? And then the students are going to reply fat. And then the teacher says, now change a letter to make it say fan. And students are going to have to remove that T and replace it with the N tile. The teacher says, next, change a letter to make it say can. Students will do the move. Then the teacher says, next, change a letter to make it say cat. And students will do that move. And then finally, make it say fat again. And then the student will remove that C and bring the F back. So if you want to see illustrations of how to teach these types of phonological awareness activities, what you can do is review the Professional Learning Communities Facilitator Guide that goes along with that What Works Clearinghouse practice guide, because they actually have some phonological awareness videos that you might want to check out and see some of these things in action. So this is starting to bring us to the close of our time together today. In terms of the content of the presentation, we're saving some time for question and answer, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how these resources can be used. But what I want to show you here is one last resource that is in the NCIL repertoire. This one is an online implementation toolkit, and it's called Phonological and Phonemic Awareness. And this is designed to help both teachers and families understand the content that we sort of just went through today, things that are represented kind of briefly in those infographics, but this is a deeper dive. This is a online module that provides much more information, but it's in a very user-friendly format. It's accessible to parents. I was a member of the Family Engagement Advisory Board when we were reviewing toolkits. I did get a chance to look at this one, and a group of families, parents, and students reviewed this toolkit to really make sure that it was getting at the level of information that was going to be helpful for families. You know, education is full of jargon and concepts that can sometimes be confusing if you don't have an education background. But NCIL really makes sure that the materials that are being produced, particularly those that are aimed at children and families, really have been field tested to make sure that they're there to support the audience that they're intended for. So this toolkit includes things like user-friendly definitions, online tutorials where you can sort of click and walk through and see different things happening on the screen to explain different concepts. It has links to different supporting materials. So there may be videos to watch, or there may be things that you can download. And then there are also, from the educator perspective, there are links to instructional videos and other resources with educators in mind. So again, this link to the toolkit is going to be in the chat. If you want to click on that and just keep a tab open, you can return to it later and take a more deeper look at that one. So before we wrap up, I wanted to let you know that we have launched our new targeted TA tool, where stakeholders, and these could be state education agencies, they could be regional education agencies, local education agencies and schools, early childhood programs, family organizations, or even local grassroots organizations that you've kind of formed around certain topics that you're interested in. NCIL actually has a process for you to submit requests for targeted technical assistance. So this could be asking for maybe a consultation with a technical assistance provider. It could be a request to bring in a training like we're doing here tonight. It could be to facilitate a meeting if maybe you're having a stakeholder group come together and you want sort of an objective person to come in to facilitate that work. You just need to reach out to NCIL, and this is a free service. And once you've made your request, it's going to be received by NCIL staff, and they are going to do a review. They'll be discussing what is involved in the request, and then they'll be reaching out to you to help you identify the ways that NCIL can be of support around your needs. So you can access the online request form using the QR link that you see here on the slide. If you want to open that up in a tab and keep that on hand. But that is a great resource to tap into if you want to do this work. But you've just had this whole workshop showing a few of the tools that are related to phonemic and phonological awareness that you could use yourself. So I talked a little bit about the online training module that was built in my state, and teachers and families have free access to that through the New Jersey Tiered Systems of Support Early Reading website. And they can go in and take that online course. And then we have a section that has family resources. And a few of these infographics have been added to that resource tab. And we advise our school districts that we're working with around our multi-tiered systems of support models that they can download those materials. And then we encourage them to think about how they can share these out with families. Because if their educators are learning this information and looking to bring these instructional practices into the classroom, we want to make sure that as schools, we're engaging our families too, to support families in gaining similar knowledge so that they can support the same kind of work at home. So that's one way that the infographics have been incorporated in my state, and we're really happy. Families love them, and we're always bringing them to different family-related events. But now I'm going to open up our session tonight for questions, or maybe even ideas that you have for how these types of resources that I just shared could be used in your local setting. Sometimes I think sharing ideas, we kind of get a little fire in us and think, oh, if someone has this idea, they're going to try it here. I want to top that and come up with another way that I can use it in my local setting. So if you're online tonight and want to talk a little bit about the resources, I would love to hear, maybe you've already used them or you're thinking about using them in the future. But then also, if you have questions about phonological or phonemic awareness, please feel free to ask. Uh-oh, crickets.
Thanks, Deborah. I'm not seeing any questions come into the Q&A right now.
Anything, Donna? I see you coming on screen now.
Okay, thank you for all the resources. I especially like the last one with the QR code. I didn't know about that service, so I think that's really
Oh yeah, wonderful. It's a really high touch way, right, to get support from your national center. I recommend any of those group of stakeholders that I listed in that long list, like check it out, see what you can bring into your local setting, because NCIL has a wonderful lineup of technical assistance providers that they'll match for you and really bring the resources in that you're in need of.
And I think the other resource that's underutilized, I guess, would be the IES.ed. I think people don't know about that, and it is a wealth of information, so much out there. So all research-based too. I mean, it's evidence-based practices. So
Yeah, I mean, like I say, in my local setting, I've tended to focus on family and parent engagement work, but I can imagine the work that you could do in a lunch and learn series within your
Mhm.
school district or a professional learning community. If you get that time to sort of do collaborative work together, there are so many great tools out there that, you know, a little bit of digging around a theme like this, you start to understand what is available for free. You know, our federal
Right.
tax dollars are really producing some great content that we can pull in and use with the educators and families
I
in our.
completely agree. Very good. All right.
So, we're leave the questions open. If anybody has one that they want to pop in, we have a shortened session tonight. We've gone through those infographics, so they're there for you. What we're going to ask for anybody that has joined us this evening, or if you're watching this on repeat later, if you'd please take a moment to scan the QR code here. I believe that the link is also going to be put into the chat if you're live with us tonight. Please take a moment to fill out this brief evaluation form. It is very short, but the information that we collect allows us to inform future material development and also, you know, confirm that people find these types of resources helpful.
Very good.
Okay. So thank you so much for joining me today for this brief session. We hope you're able to join our last session in the Educator's Science of Reading Toolbox series on December 4th. This one is going to be another one of these sessions about using NCIL resources. Specifically, the title is Using an Infographic to Learn About Structured Literacy. So that one is sure to be a good one. So check that out.
Very good. Yep.
Thanks again. So be sure to stay connected to us on social media. We have YouTube videos that you can, a YouTube channel that you can check out some videos on, and you can always email us at ncilliteracy@gmail.com and consider signing up for our newsletter. You can do that through our website, improvingliteracy.org. And thank you again for coming out.
Thank you, Deborah. Good night.